I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
It was a celebration of democracy and diversity as former Senator Kamala Harris made history as the first woman, first Black American, and first Asian American to become vice president. Attending dignitaries, including former U.S. Presidents Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, wore masks and sat several feet apart. Notably absent was Trump, who flouted one last convention by refusing to meet with Biden or attend his inauguration, breaking with a political tradition seen as affirming the peaceful transfer of power.
A goodbye. We love you. We will be back in some form.
Top Republicans, including Vice President Mike Pence and the party's congressional leaders, skipped Trump's send-off earlier in the day and attended Biden's inauguration instead.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
It was an inauguration unlike any other in U.S. history. Democrat Joe Biden on Wednesday was sworn in as the country's 46th president in a ceremony set against the backdrop of a devastating pandemic, unprecedented security, and a deeply divided nation.
This is America's day. This is democracy's day.
Standing on the steps of the U.S. Capitol exactly 2 weeks after a mob of Donald Trump supporters stormed the building in a deadly siege, Biden called for an end to the country's, quote, uncivil war, amid warnings of possible renewed violence.
This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward.
Some right-wing extremist groups had vowed to disrupt Biden's inauguration in the wake of the January 6th attack, but only scattered protests emerged on Wednesday. The National Mall, typically packed with throngs of supporters, instead was filled with nearly 200,000 U.S. flags.
Yeah, I have as my special guest today my son Jonathan Jackson, who's our National Rainbow spokesman. David Crawford, president of Montgomery Seminary. We just heard Joe Biden give his inaugural address. Your first impression?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here with you today. It's an honor to be here. I think we're looking forward to a period of time where we can hear the truth. I think that all leaders have a responsibility to pursue truth. Dr. Howard Thurman held that up as one of the hallmarks of leadership, and that we pursue our jobs with honesty and integrity, and that those were often in short supply over the last few years. So this is a refreshing break with that. And I think that while this is a hopeful day, we're reminded that there's much work to do. We have a lot of work ahead, and we must not lose sight of that in the midst of this.
You took on the big lie theory.
Yeah.
Biden didn't win the election. He did win the election. And his people believe that the big lie, the election was stolen. If we find back something stolen from them.
Well, as you know, we talk a lot these days about living in sort of unprecedented times. And for most of us, this is unprecedented, but it's not unprecedented in the long arc of history. The big lie has been around for a long, long time. I think what's a little bit frightening about it in this era is that those big lies can spread so much more quickly and among so many more people. And so the responsibility, again, to Dr. Thurman's admonition that we must pursue the truth. This is a time where leadership has to be very sensitive to the truth. And we as people and citizens in this country have to hold our leaders accountable for the truth.
You know, the first big lie was blacks inferior. White supremacy.
Right. I think we have to confront our nation's history. I was very glad to hear the Reverend Raphael Warnock's his comments on COVID 1619. There is still a movement afoot in the Senate to say our history starts in 1776 to try to sanitize, if you will, to put.
We've been here 157 years when that happened, right?
We were here over 157 years, and so it's a history that has to be confronted so that we can get to the truth, as Dr. Crawford had made mention of. And as it relates to President Biden's remarks, I was very happy to hear him use the word racism, to call it for what it is, to bring up the word of the systemic racism in another term. And then he brought on the issue of the truth. Those three things are very distinct and very much intertwined that we have to confront. And now we're at a moment where there is a call for unity, but it's hard to unify with someone that is wrong. We have to first get to the truth. And the big issue, and that has to be confronted, I would say on day one, is was this treason or was this a simple mob action?
The attempt
On the attack on the mall. I was happy to hear him mention January 6th. It was a treasonous act. It was the willful trying to stop of a transfer of power of our election. January 6th was not a random day. Federal officers were assaulted. A man was killed. Other persons had been stampeded. And 156 years ago this season, Abraham Lincoln gave his speech with malice towards none. And he made a mistake when he did not treat those persons that were from the Confederacy that took up arms against our government as treasonous, and they reassembled themselves.
It's hard to heal with glass in the wound.
Yeah, well, I was going to say precisely the same thing. The process is a process. Healing doesn't just happen because we want it to happen. It's a process, and it begins with the truth. You've got to have accountability in that process. Until we've done that.
The big lie was blacks were inferior. Therefore, just slavery, Jim Crow justify that. I was arrested as a student trying to use the public library. Lies, and each time we mastered one of those lies, chose truth and said, always became better. So another thing I'm concerned about Jonathan on this address is that he talked about the involvement, the nature of unity. Kamala Harris represents something very new and very profound for America.
Right. So now we're looking at the first line of succession for the presidency is a woman of East Indian and Southeast Asian descent, the first female to be federally elected of the one of two nations' federal office holders. So a glass ceiling has been shattered for women. A glass ceiling has been shattered again for blacks going into the highest office. That's a big deal. And it's also interesting that she's in the shadow of her alumni of Howard University. So it's a big day for historically black colleges. Now you're going to have a black man in the United States Senate from Morehouse, one to be a senior advisor from Morehouse and Cedric Richmond and the Senator Raphael Warnock, and a minister. I think it's going to be interesting. He's Reverend Senator Warnock. His salutation of minister is higher than that of senator. And then to see another historically black college graduate in Kamala Harris is just an awesome day for all those that have come from black colleges.
Joe sees America through a door, not through a keyhole. The keyhole, you only see your group. But all of us must be included in the American dream.
Included in the dream and included in celebrating this moment, which under normal circumstances, I think would have been forefront in the conversation, but it hasn't been since January 6th. And a lot of that has been unfortunately overshadowed, and we need to lift it up and celebrate it.
The big lie
and
drove people mad. Yeah. And they're willing to die for a cause that didn't exist, called alternative facts. So it strikes me also that you look at Trump's willingness to use his talents to mislead people. Very talented man, Donald Trump.
Well, he has put his mark across America's skyline from New York City to Chicago to restoring the old post office in Washington, D.C.
The Central Park 5.
Well, I was talking about the architects that he's done. Some of the buildings and works are beautiful, but then what he's done it on is a basis of such a corrupt, money-loving, idolatry of just money over people, money over man, money over all things good. So he did not have to ask for the murder of 5 young Black teenage boys that are my age in Central Park. And after it was proven that they were innocent, no apology. I remember when he was running for president, they asked him his favorite book. And he says, my favorite book is The Art of the Deal. And they said, is there any other book you like? He says, the Bible. And they said, well, which book in the Bible? He says, I like the whole Bible. I mean, he just can't stop lying. He couldn't name, when he talked about 2 Galatians and a Corinthians. I mean, he just can't stop. So you see a person that's spiritually devoid, and I kind of bristle when I hear people call him crazy. He's not crazy. He has an ideology. His parents were very wealthy. He went to the Wharton School of Business. And he has a strong following. He's got many billionaire backers that have stood with him. And now he's put 300 people into the judiciary and the Federal Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments. He represents a point of view and a policy that, although we celebrate now, we have to go to work because Trumpism lives on. The mouthpiece is gone, but he's built an institution underneath himself that we will have to fight for years to come.
He's rather secure in his line. I mean, 25,000 according to Washington just saw that line. Half truth is the whole lie, you know. And that's not working for us. And I'm concerned now that the attempted coup has been underestimated, what the impact was.
Well, I think when we talk the conversation, unity again is a goal. We all want to see unity, but that has not existed.
Aspirational speech, huh?
Yes, and so from that standpoint, we've got to get through a process, and I think Jonathan hit it on the head. This is a process where I think all of those who act in good faith, all of those who wanted this change to take place that took place today, we've got to find unity amongst ourselves.
Well, you and Jonathan, clearly, Charlottesville, Nazi March on Jewish Temple was wrong, mimicking a handicapped writer. So the Mexican American judge couldn't be judicious. Blacks and African hated assholes and all that. Yet the evangelicals seem to excuse all of that. Franklin Graham came this week and said that the 7 who voted against Trump, after all, they were Judases. Judas is the strongest word in the Christian world. I mean, no one has a child named Judas.
Right. And so for arguably America's first family of church, if you will, a family that has had unbridled access to the presidency for the last 70 years is the Graham family. Mm-hmm. And so for Franklin Graham, if you will, the head of the evangelical movement, to say that the 10 persons, congressional leaders that voted to impeach Trump in the House were Judases. Well, people would say Judas was worthy of death. And that is a very direct attack on a threat to those legislative leaders. And it has to be confronted.
On the line, Dr. Crawford, the fact is, he said these words, given how violent the mob was, those 10 guys are not in jeopardy. Those who didn't vote are silent. They're scared. The family will attack. Right. The political office. So you have a Congress full of people who are scared, as opposed to courageous and free.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think that's where the folks that we used to think of as Republicans or moderate Republicans, to the extent there are any these days, I think have been, again, unfortunately, encouraging this behavior rather than truly stepping up and having the political courage to in fact, stand up to it. And
we should address the modern Republicans. Yesterday's Jefferson Davis Democrats. In the South, Jefferson Davis had believed the coup against our country's civil war, right? And he went a step further. saying blacks were inferior, whites were superior, men were superior, women were inferior, the whole range of stuff. And then Franklin Graham embraced that side of history. So George Wallace was a Democrat.
Yep.
George Wallace was a Democrat.
Herman Talmadge.
All of the Democrats. When we got the right to vote in 1965, they shifted parties. So yesterday's Democrats are now today's Republicans. Yesterday's Lincoln Republicans are now.
Yeah.
So Dr. King's father, for example, was
but also going really back to 1980 and Lee Atwater and the Reagan, election of 1980, which brought together the evangelical movement and the Southern strategy that converted those conservative Democrats to Republicans.
And all the way to 1983, when Reagan went down to Florida and spoke to the evangelicals to crystallize it and talked about the evil empire. I mean, he essentially asserted the state into the church. We talk about separating church from state. He put the power of the state into the church and had the church wrap itself around state issues. And in those words that Mr. Graham had put out there, he said he lowered our taxes. He stopped China from stepping on us. He was purely political in all of his statements. And although he said President Trump was not perfect, we voted for him because all of what he's done for us. He is not doing race whistling. He's ringing the bell on the highest mountaintop.
With a lot of help.
What's very good about that is that you look at poor whites have not done well on this, as poor blacks have not. The $1.5 trillion tax that went to the richest 1%, right? I think many people think his base, those around red cap, his base are very rich people. You don't get 75 million people unless you have fellows that's not in the camera's view.
There's no question that he has had a broad base of appeal, really throughout the old Confederacy and the states that sort of view themselves as part of that old Confederacy.
He also hinted about the pandemic. This is a devastating pandemic. 400,000 people dead, and the numbers rising. 20 million people have been tested. So more than 500,000 more may die unless we move quickly.
And, and we have to be skeptical of some of those numbers. One of the other challenges that President Biden is going to have is on day one, he has to repair things. So think about it. If you go into a house and you have to repair doorknobs and doors that aren't hanging correctly and all these other things, like it appears as if you didn't do anything, but you're just mechanically trying to get the structure back in place. This man has done so much damage, President Trump, that we haven't even calculated yet. The Postal Department is a mess. People's mail has been delayed. Equipment has been destroyed. And he went through agency after agency, from intel to security. I mean, we had so many foreign posts that had no ambassador. Those relationships have gone. Some have to be established and reestablished. Others have to be
nearly half the cabinet acting or recently appointed. And when you get at lower levels, people actually in jobs that for which they should have been confirmed by the Senate and weren't. And we're not paying. And again, the Senate was never paying attention to any of this.
Undemocratic force.
Yeah.
And there's silence, and which is complicity. So I would like to think of the words of Reverend Martin Luther King when he says, peace isn't the absence of noise, but it's the presence of justice. We have to make the first line of action justice. What happened on the mall that day on the 6th? Was that treason? Was that traitorous? Was that sedition? That we have to answer that. And all persons that have been held responsible, and not the 40, 50 people that they're...
The congressional force organized a reconnaissance.
For those persons, and Senator Cruz and Senator Hawley, they have to be called out because it's not going to be a peace. It's going to be this enemy was within. We know the protocols of the Capitol Hill. You had 1/3 of our body of government there, and the doors were left open.
It's a substantial part of his group involved with police. We challenged police in Louisville, killing Breonna Taylor, and no one has been indicted for it. But they support each other. When McDonald was killed in Chicago, cover up 400 days. So President Police Association in Chicago support the march. Then most of the marches were police. Now they've got to check out the National Guard. 12 of them were confessed racists.
Well, which goes to beg the question, why don't we put those protocols in place before today? That now that we see that they had to relieve 12 National Guards persons of their duty because they thought they could be a threat to the President of the United States' life. We need more, not training of the police department. We need a tool on the front end for more screening and selection, that the murders that were taking place across and the police that were unindicted, we have to even go back to the 14th Amendment. Citizens cannot be killed by the police and the police never held accountable. You can't put citizens underneath the law and police above the law.
Well, it's really, you hear a lot of calls for reconciliation these days, particularly from those on the other side. And again, reconciliation is an outcome and a process. You cannot get there without going through a fact-seeking, truthful process. And you will never get to reconciliation. And all too often, I think when people are calling for reconciliation, they're really calling for a return to the status quo. We can't go back to the status quo. We have to move forward. And I think the pursuit of justice on a whole range of fronts, you mentioned Laquan McDonald 2 years ago when Jason Van Dyke received a sentence for just under 7 years. And
First time police have been indicted in 50 years.
Yes. And here we are, you and I both testified before Judge Dow in federal court on the consent decree, and we're not getting the job done on the consent decree right here at home. We still have a lot of work to do. So we see criminal justice reform down in Springfield, but that has to be implemented. That has to be monitored. So that pursuit of justice requires work, and so we've got a lot to do.
Well, let me add one point to that to put it into context. On the first time an officer had been indicted and convicted in 50 years in Chicago. In the last 10 years in Chicago, we have spent over $750 million in overtime and over $750 million in settlements for persons that have been wronged and abused at the hands of the police.
And they're still in force too.
Right, and they're still in the force. So $1.5 billion spent on policing, training, and overtime. That's not payroll. That's not regular overtime. That's just, and not one officer was ever held accountable while the city pays out over $200 million a year for misconduct.
But it seems to me that a grown man shoots somebody back seven times. He doesn't need education. He needs jail. He pulled up Jacob's shirt and shot me on the skin. Didn't even want the T-shirt between him and the bullet.
Well, Dan, and we have to get to the rot that's going on that we've been able to see. That many of these persons that are going back that were at the Capitol flew in private. Some flew in private. Some were firemen. Some were on the police department in Maine, in Alabama, here in Chicago, in Denver, Colorado. And they're going back to school boards. They're going back to fire departments. They're going back to being real estate agents. This is the systemic part of racism that we have to address. Why? Because they've not changed their mind since 2 weeks ago. Their position is only hardened. They feel like they've been victimized and aggrieved. They're coming back and will reassemble. We have to go after that level of the infection and the cancer of the body politic.
But it seems, I'm close on this note. Dr. King marched on Washington, hope and redemption. Donald Trump marched on Washington, hate and rejection. Both of them marched on Washington, except Dr. King was one of hope and healing, and Trump was hurt and hate.
And as you recall, that was the largest military presence in the nation at that time during the time of the March on Washington and during the time of President Trump. Our officers, our trained officials from the Capitol Police, from the D.C. Police, from the National Guard were acting like patrol officers at a schoolyard. They were told to stand down.
You shouldn't shoot people in the back. I'm going to extra train for that.
Right, and there was not one officer that shot one gun that said they were afraid.
Because it's so difficult to find them. I want to express my thanks to you for watching this first segment of our program today. We'll go to Bishop Grant and other allies momentarily. But do remain involved. At the end of the day, voting matters, and it has consequences. Thank you very much.
Good morning. We are in the midst of a major drive to get more members, more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those incarcerated, change the policies that impact students attending colleges and universities, if you want to be a policymaker, then you need to join Rainbow Push and join by paying your $35 right now. Some of you watch us every week. You listen to us on the radio. You're viewing us in social media. We need you to become a member. It's only $35 a year. If you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, we've awarded more than $10 million to scholars year to date. What do you have to do to give and support Push? It's really very simple. You can go to rainbowpush.org if you're on a computer and press donate. Give any amount. Every dollar is important. You want to talk to somebody, call us at 773-256-2775. You can give right now, any denomination that you choose. You can text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. Text the word on your cell phone. Most of you have a cell phone. Just text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444, and you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving. Or call us 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and just press donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace. In the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is.
When 22-year-old Amanda Gorman spoke at Joe Biden's inauguration on January 20th, she became the youngest poet ever to recite their work at a presidential inauguration. Gorman's poetry focuses on feminism and race, fitting themes given the most notable historic moment of the day. Kamala Harris became America's first female, first Black, and first South Asian vice president. Before the inauguration, Gorman was named the Youth Poet Laureate of her hometown, Los Angeles, in 2014. She was later the first person to be named a National Youth Poet Laureate. Some of her well-known poems include In This Place, An American Lyric, and The Miracle of Morning.
The question isn't if we will weather this unknown, but how we will weather this unknown together.
Poetry's presence at presidential inaugurations is a fairly new tradition. Only 3 presidents before Biden had poems recited during the programming. Robert Frost spoke at John F. Kennedy's inauguration in 1961. However, the sun's reflection off of the snow that blanketed D.C. blinded Frost, who was in his late 80s. He could not read Dedication, the poem he wrote specifically for the occasion. Vice President Lyndon Johnson offered Frost his top hat to use to shield the light. Frost ultimately recited the gift outright from memory. Poetry readings were a feature of both of Bill Clinton's inaugurations. In 1993, Maya Angelou read On the Pulse of Morning.
Come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow.
She was the first person of color and the first woman to recite a poem at a presidential inauguration. The recording later won a Grammy Award and remains one of Angelou's most famous poems. And in 1997, Clinton invited Miller Williams, who recited his poem Of History and Hope. Both of Barack Obama's inaugurations had poets speak as well. In 2009, poet Elizabeth Alexander composed and recited Praise Song for the Day for the swearing in of the nation's first Black president.
It was amazing to watch that poem, to listen to a poem filled with so much possibility at a time in which this nation needs to hear a message of hope.
Words that hit home for all ages.
And I kept thinking, darling, I hope I can keep your energy, your love, your brilliance alive and well.
Minnesota civil rights activist Josie Johnson feels Gorman's youthful exuberance shares a unique connection to the woman who took her oath of office on the same stage.
Our young woman, Amanda, saw the results of hard work, discipline, determination. So Kamala modeled that for her.
On this session, we have two very special people. Dr. Ronald Johnson, who co-pastor of High Point Union, right? Mm-hmm. And Kiana Horton, who's Mount Zion Temple in Hamilton. Am I right about that?
Yes.
Now, it's not pitching out the question, but you're a sorority sister, now vice president. How do you feel about that?
Yes, I feel honored to have witnessed such a momentous occasion. I mean, I only can say that we're very proud of our sorority sister, but just to be able to be her sister in such a moment as this, it's really an honor.
But she's all about sister, right?
Yes, absolutely.
What does that mean to you, Ron? What does it mean to you so?
So my daughter is currently a student at Howard University. And so through my daughter, we are so very proud of our new Vice President, Kamala Harris. An absolutely amazing accomplishment for our country, not just for Black people, but for our country to be at this place.
It is said that President Biden chose Kamala. Black women chose him. In South Carolina, when the stuff was in the fan, Black women chose him. So he honored the committee by getting a very qualified woman. And that's significant about her is that there's no one questions her credentials. State Attorney General of California, one of every 10 Americans live in California, very qualified. And on the various hearings she was on, the question was always so poignant to the point.
Yeah, and I believe that even as CNN posted this graphic of the diversity, even in his cabinet thus far, I think we can see a great difference already between the past president and our current president, just Biden, just from how he earnestly seeks to be very inclusive and making every race, of every ethnicity feel so they are heard and they are a part of America as anyone else. That's
the kind of Lyndon Johnson moment. When Kennedy was out of student, Kennedy was killed, so the whole world was over. Because Johnson had a record as a kind of right winger from Texas. The spirit touched him in such a way, he put forward more legislation than anybody since Lincoln. Mm. And so Biden seemed to me to be getting better than his own record, too.
Biden is starting off certainly on the right foot from his cabinet selections. We cannot forget, however, what has been revealed. And there are people who simply will not respond to the unity he is trying to bring forth. It's been revealed now. We know that 71 million or more, someone may have the right number, voted for Trump. Almost half of the nation. There are people who simply are not going to accept Biden. And so I think as a nation, we need to continue. We need to keep it real from this point forward.
Biden is in real danger, and Kamala.
I'm not so much concerned about their physical danger. I just simply don't want us to get caught up in the victory and forget what has been revealed.
Yeah, well, because it manifests itself at the local level. I mean, these guys killing people, shoot them in the back and walking away. Because police are on another level of human beings. That's a problem. Have those mob on the January 6th, they were police.
Absolutely.
So much so until they think some congressmen were part of the deal.
Oh yeah.
As well as they took 12 National Guards away. This thing is pretty deep, Piano.
Yeah. And I think Biden does a really good job at echoing peace. I think even in his speech, one thing that really stood out to me was that he said disagreement should not bring disunion. And I think even with so much violence that we have seen, even with the police force within the past few years, I think Biden is really adamant about bringing peace and justice to those who have been overlooked and have not received justice thus far.
The first priority right now has to be the end of this pandemic.
Absolutely.
We lost 400,000 people, but Trump lied about that.
Absolutely.
Even not the mask or social justice.
He lied this morning in his, as he was preparing to leave, his final speech was lies even about taking credit for the vaccine and so forth. And so Biden and Harris and the cabinet and all of us have a lot of work to do to try to prevent ongoing loss of American lives due to this virus.
What strikes me about the virus, among other things, talk about Kiana, is that an African-American woman, Kizzy Corbett, the lead scientists are resolving it. That's so many black people are too afraid to take the vaccine. Should not be, because it's highly scientific. Since that there's no the scheme and taking vaccine this time around.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard from many different people, from nurses, from people who are in college, people of different levels of education or different sectors and fields that they work in. And from hearing so many people talk, you hear a lot of people afraid because they think of this conspiracy theory and thinking that, well, the government just wants to further control. I've heard different spectrums of it. I've heard people say that they were afraid because they didn't know how it was going to react with their bodies and how they were giving different types of vaccines in different locations. So I think the fear is very legitimate, but I do think that we should take a leap and receive the vaccine because we don't want to
the school got a vaccination for smallpox.
Absolutely.
That is true.
And all kinds of other
flu shots.
diseases.
Yeah, we've all been exposed to those before. So.
And the other thing is that Tuskegee was targeted to blacks.
Yep.
This pandemic is worldwide.
Yes.
Here's the state of Germany and Britain and Canada and the U.S. It's pretty big. So I think people should not choose superstition over science.
Absolutely. But my sister is exactly right. I've talked to people this week, even in my family, who refuse to take it. And so we have a lot of work to do to educate our people right at the dinner table about taking this vaccine to protect ourselves.
We should not be the first to die and the last to get medicine.
Absolutely. My hope is that Black doctors, Black pharmacists will go directly into the communities and begin to encourage our people to get the vaccine.
I said to Dr. Fauci the other day that you see Dr. Fauci and you see Redfield. You need some black faces making the case. It reinforces where we are now.
Absolutely.
When I took my test, I had Dr. Crawford to come here. But she's the lead scientist on it. A black woman. And she's taking it.
You took it. I watched you, and you're here. Amen. So
let me express my thank you tonight watching Kiana Horton.
Yeah.
Yeah. AKA what I'm talking about. Thank you, doctor.
God bless you.
Be right back in just a moment. Thank you.
Obviously, there was a personal element to see my former vice president become the 46th president, to see Kamala Harris as our first woman vice president. But more broadly, I think inaugurations signal a tradition of a peaceful transfer of power that is over 2 centuries old.
Well, I think the fact that the three of us are standing here talking about a peaceful transfer of power speaks to the institutional integrity of our country.
So this is an unusual thing. We are both trying to come back to normalcy, deal with totally abnormal challenges, and do what we do best, which is try to make a more perfect union. It's an exciting time.
We've got to not just listen to folks we agree with, but listen to folks we don't. And one of my fondest memories of the inauguration was the grace and generosity that President Bush showed me and Laura Bush showed Michelle. And it was a reminder that we can have fierce disagreements and yet recognize each other's common humanity, and that as Americans, we have more in common than what separates us.
I think if Americans would love their neighbor like they would like to be loved themselves, a lot of the division in our society would end.
That's what this means. It's a new beginning. And everybody needs to get off their high horse and reach out to their friends and neighbors and try to make it possible.
If, in fact, as George said, we're looking for what binds us together, the American people are strong, they're tough, they can get through hardship, and there's no problem they can't solve when we're working together. I think that was the theme of Joe's inaugural speech, and I think all of us discovered that we're at our best when we're all moving in the same direction.
America's a generous country with people with great hearts. All three of us are lucky to be the president of this country. Mr. President, I'm pulling for your success. Your success is our country's success, and God bless you.
I'm glad you're there, and I wish you well. You have spoken for us today. Now you will lead for us. and we're ready to march with you. Good luck. God bless you.
Joe, I'm proud of you, and you and Kamala need to know that you've got all of us here rooting for your success, keeping you in our prayers, and we will be available in any ways that we can as citizens to help you guide our country forward. We wish you Godspeed.
Thank you. Now, I have a very special guest, Elder Grant and Elder Barnes. We're building a youth movement in the Rainbow Push intentionally. I was young 1960 as the NAACP youth leader. So you're involved with, you have the right to vote. Every young person has the right to vote. How do you talk about racism among your group?
I believe voting is essential. I think those, especially the young people in Georgia, show that. They show many of us that we have the opportunity to march to the polls and turn our pain into power, showing that we can make a mark. Our voice can be heard, not just on social media, but by the push of a button, showing what we believe and what matters most to us.
It's conversational. It's not limited just to voting.
Mm-hmm.
Every government can do other things too.
Right. I think one of the things that they can do is like what we're doing here and with Rainbow Push Coalition. And there's a need for these kind of civil rights organizations with the Rainbow Push Coalition, the NAACP, the Transformative Justice Coalition. It is more than voting. It's a movement. And so we've got to work the movement.
Vote is part of the content. Young people should vote because you get more scholarships. Student loan debt is greater than credit card debt, for example. Vote because you're going to be the first to go to war if there's a war. You want peace rather than war. Negotiation rather than confrontation. So the reason the numbers, plus you have the right to vote and run for office. I think sometimes we underestimate the power of the vote. Since a group of young people, and you guys are supposed to be a precinct in jail in Cook County, right? Well, Mr. Judge, why should I vote? So, well, you're going to face the jury. You want an all-white jury? No. Only those who register vote can serve on juries. So you can vote for the judge, state's attorney, attorney general, governor, senator. You run those offices as well. So there's power in that vote.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, even to run for office, something that you showed in your campaign in '84 and in '88 is that not only is our power to vote, but be one of those people who have a seat at the table to make the decision. And I think that's moving forward what we can do, even in creating organizations or your organization with Rainbow Push to the fulfillment of a more perfect union.
How did Biden's speech strike you today?
I think Biden's speech was a breath of fresh air in America. For 4 years, we have been on the edge of our seats, kind of almost fearful of what could happen next. And of course, we saw on January the 6th, one date out of many, the heights that, the right would go to. And so I think that Biden did a wonderful job with creating unity. He always hones in on the fact that he wants to be a president for all of those who voted for him and who didn't. He is about unifying. And so I think that and then of course with his us being preachers, all of us were happy to hear him quote the Bible that weeping will endure for a night, but joy would come in the morning. I think he gave us hope like we never had it before.
Joy came this morning.
It did come this morning.
We work in the dark. We work in the dark. We have 2 years sent out of Georgia. So I worked in the dark. All 18-year-olds who are in high school now will be 18 by November can vote right now. They should be part of the high school ritual. What's called a diploma. Same time.
Absolutely. And it's powerful when we can work in the dark, because I believe we can do things that can come to light. What's done in the dark will soon come to light. And so it's important that we do the things that people can.
Some of your dad's philosophy there.
Absolutely.
Well, it's true, and so no lie can live forever.
No.
They get exposed. But then I think that he has convinced millions of white people election was stolen from them, and therefore they remain ever dangerous. And I hope that we're successful. Reduce non-founding fears. Well, the big lie for a long time was blacks were inferior. That was a big lie. It justified slavery. Not just criminal justice, criminal injustice, but also history and philosophy and medicine, law, and all that. Now the big lie has been he lost the election. Now I want to close on this note here because I want those who are watching today to become part of Rainbow Push's youth division. How can they join the youth division?
They can go to rainbowpush.org, of course, and always take out a membership. Student membership is $15 a year. And for elders, it's $15 a year. All general membership is $35 a year. We want you to join this movement simply because we've seen now in this election, particularly, what can happen. Georgia had not been blue in 28 years, almost 3 decades. But the Gen Zers, the 18 to 25-year-olds, that was the biggest voting bloc, Reverend, in this entire election. And it flipped Georgia blue in the presidential election. And in the Senate runoff, we have now elected John Ossoff and Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock.
And since Noel was replacing us and who left, he's on 2 years. We got to start Warnock right now.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. We have to continue to get the ball rolling. We can't stop now. We can't get complacent and just get so happy that we forget that there's more work to do.
Exactly.
Well, I want to say this, the pandemic, how you guys handling the young people risking no mask in public?
One of the things that I even share with those who are in my circle, that it's important to wear a mask, to wash up, clean up, because there are people that you will be around. You're not just doing this for your own safety, but the safety of your family, your elders, your parents, those who matter most to you.
Exactly. And I echoing off that same point, personally for me, it's like when you go home, if you want to put yourself in danger, then that's a decision that you ought to make. But you ought to not be making that decision if you're going back to your mother, your father, your grandparents, those who are not going out. You're the only one in the house going out. You would be bringing your germs, bringing this virus back into your home, and you would be the reason. And we don't want to do that.
AIDS is based on some sexual contact. Those who are not involved in sexual contact, without any protection, they were at risk. Now you simply can breathe. People around you can pass off this virus. And I really want to think that those who are watching it, young people, do take the vaccine, honor protocols, take the vaccine, wear your mask, distance, and no social grouping. There's a big flow of more viruses after Thanksgiving and after Christmas. So the virus kills. Thank you guys for being part of this.
Thank you, Reverend.
I'm anxious to get your generation more involved because I think that you must do this spring and fall, spring and summer. God bless you.
Hi, I'm Todd Yeary here outside Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push headquarters, where people of goodwill from all walks and all places gather as comrades in the movement for justice and equality. Social justice movements have been birthed in the imaginations of people in places just like this. You can be a part of this justice movement too. Join Rainbow Push as we fight for justice in the 21st century. Go to rainbowpush.org or dial 773-FREEDOM and remember, keep hope alive.
This is my Reverend Dr. Turner Jeanette Wilson, pastor of Maple United Church.
All
right. Bishop Thomas Grant, who is, among other things, the bishop of a church, a son who's aspiring to become a bishop, and a national field director. What was your take on Biden's address?
Well, I think it was practical. It was aspirational, and it gave us a great deal of insight into the possibilities. Several days ago, we had resistance in the Capitol. We had insurgents. We had a sustained, shared dynamic of a coup inside out. Persons who, on one hand, wanted to overthrow a free and fair election, and then wanted to go as far as to disrupt the government. And I think in real time, he spoke to the possibilities of us becoming a much more perfect union in the days and months ahead.
Biden had to come today, and he spoke a tone of healing, yet he must know that it's not over.
There will still be 147 Republicans that on the same day, in spite of what had happened,
that's right,
on the same day, still continued their diatribe of conspiracy and almost succession from the Union in a lot of ways.
And 74 million people are still with Trump. They voted for him. So he has a mass of people based on the lies that you talked
America
about.
has been set back by Trump.
The whole
and set back and set up.
Believing that elections are not free and fair, and there was they can play the whisper the black thing on the Brock. But in the case of Biden versus Trump, is white leadership.
Well, it is overthrow the government, suppress the vote, throw out the dreamers, move around polling places, attack the Postal Service, and then, of all things, say that the election is rigged.
And then play to the fears of a white body of people, not just poor, but white people in America. They're trying to take this country from you. You have to rise up, because the people that stormed the Capitol were not just poor whites. It was whites at every level. They were police officers. They were former armed military veterans.
Elected officials.
But we also have to worry about this whole states' rights movement. Reverend, you talked about the New South. There's a states' rights agenda that never left this nation. So each state now must wonder.
Whenever the ex-slave state vote and coalesce, they can win big elections.
There you go.
And weaponize evangelicals. You know,
And
to
they
hear
have been silent.
and to
Those
hear
evangelicals
Garth Brooks
have been silent.
sing Amazing Grace, who has been one of those evangelicals who perhaps is being converted in a lot of ways, because violence is not an ingredient that in this experiment called democracy ever works. It never works towards the end goal of uniting the citizens and uniting the country. And so I think we've got to take a real hard look, Reverend Wilson, at the next days and weeks ahead, and whether or not there's a real conversion in American politics.
But this pandemic, this is Britain, it's France, the heads of state I'm talking about, and Canada.
And the virus doesn't care if you're rich or poor, black or white, red, yellow, brown, black or white, all get the virus, can get the virus, and its impact does not stop based on your color. What does stop is
the demand access to the vaccine, not demand the right not to have it, huh?
That's right. You better demand the right to have it. And you know, the hospitals that are closing in our communities.
Bishop, given your work nationally, we got to hit the ground running, because Ossoff is for 6 years. Roanoke is for 2 years.
Yes.
Right.
So those who want to support having Roanoke sit in the Senate in Georgia and around must vote now.
They not only must vote, but they must stay energized and mobilized. And what happened in Georgia, I believe Florida is next. What Stacey Abrams, and she was magnificent at our King virtual celebration this week, what she and others were able to do in Georgia is a template that not only can we do it in Florida, we can do it in Mississippi,
South
Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, and cause it to become viral that goes into Ohio and Pennsylvania and other of these quagmires and strongholds.
But you have to run.
You have to.
If you run, you might lose. Don't run, you're guaranteed to lose. So go for it, right?
Yeah, all politics is local. We must go back state by state and re-register. Make sure that people are ready to vote, because you got local elections coming up. You have judicial elections coming up. You got these state races. We're losing the criminal justice reform. Educational policies are set at the state level.
Won't you be part of our National Rainbow Coalition? Go to rainbowpush.org, right? On the website.
And donate.
Donate now.
And donate.
You need to donate now so we can hit the ground, and we want to come to a city near you to help register.
Remember, come to your city.
Yeah.
Rainbow Push Freedom on your dial, 773 Freedom.
373-3366, Freedom on your dial.
Now, if you can't dial Freedom, 773-373-3366. Now, if you don't know how to spell freedom, I know.
Cut. Well, thank you very much. We're glad that we worked hard this fall. Benefit of all Trump is in Florida now.
Yeah.
Play golf night and day.
Yes, sir.
Joe Biden is now the president. Kamala Harris is a hobby away from being the president of the United States, because we voted.
Say it like you mean it. He's out of public housing.
He's out of public housing. Explain that, Reverend. He's out of public housing.
If I run, I can just be president. I said, you got to stay in public housing. I came out of the housing project.
That's right.
Why is the housing public housing?
The White House is public housing.
This is a good thing. Let me stress my thanks to you for watching us today. Since it's Rainbow every week and every day is about Rainbow Push. Freedom on your dial. God bless you. Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did and what we did and how global it was. Whether speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select PUSH for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
Hi, I'm Todd Yeary here outside Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push headquarters, where people of goodwill from all walks and all places gather as comrades in the movement for justice and equality. Social justice movements have been birthed in the imaginations of people in places just like this. You can be a part of this justice movement too. Join Rainbow Push as we fight for justice in the 21st century. Go to rainbowpush.org or dial 773-FREEDOM and remember, keep hope alive.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join